Hello and welcome to CWU Live. It's a big one tonight, a Royal Mail Group members special. So we know thousands of you will be joining. And believe me, we want to get your views. We're going to be talking about some really big, really important developments. The takeover bid, talks with government, the USO, talks with the regulator, new entrance terms, pay, sick pay, and so much more. These are all really, really big issues, and it will take us a little while to get through all the key points, I think. So we're pleading for a little bit of patience and to talk about everything that's been going on. I'm joined by CWU General Secretary Dave Ward and Assistant General Secretary Postal Martin Walsh. Thank you both for joining us. Dave and Martin will be giving detailed updates, and then there'll be lots of time for your questions. So do put those in the YouTube chat. And we also want to know where you're watching from. So put in your questions. Also tell us a bit about yourself in that comments box. Whilst that's going on, while we're finding out where people are tuning in from, what questions they might have, Dave, I understand a lot has been going on over the past week or so. Can you give members a bit of an update?
Yeah, so hi everybody. Really looking forward to having a debate with you tonight on all the big issues. There has been a lot going on, and we want to give you a comprehensive update on obviously what's happening in your workplace, how the union's addressing those issues. On USO reform, Martin will talk a lot about that as well. And I want to cover with Martin where we are with the Royal Mail Group takeover bid. I think first of all, want to kind of reassert the fact that hopefully everybody understands that the external environment that Royal Mail operates in is very challenging. It has been for many, many years. And the reality of letter decline, the reality of a changing world of communications, alongside the fact that in the area that Royal Mail is seeking to grow parcels, the competitors pretty much operate a model of bogus self-employment. This makes things very difficult for all of us. However, Royal Mail has two very important advantages. One of them is you, the members, its people, and you are probably their biggest asset. And if we can only ever get them to recognise that and start working with you rather than against you, then we can move forward. The other advantage that Royal Mail has is that its infrastructure is unlike any other in the UK. So whilst there's a move towards digitalisation and everybody's using different forms of technology, there is certainly still going to be in the future a need for a physical infrastructure that connects people. Royal Mail is the best company that has the chance to build on that. So we see the need for change, but we also see the need for opportunities here. And what we're trying to do is use the talks on the USO, use the talks on where we are with the takeover bid to see if we can get a completely fresh start for you, for customers, and that we can actually build this company again. And we think there are good chances to do that. What it's going to need, and in some ways it doesn't matter who owns Royal Mail, it's going to need support for the workforce, treatment of the workforce in a much better way than what you've had to put up with in the last few years. That means as well giving you the opportunity to deliver what you're asked to deliver on time with quality of service results improving. Royal Mail have to start resourcing your offices in a better way to do that. It needs investment in the workforce. Whoever owns it is going to have to invest, but that investment has to be the right investment. It has to be investment in you, and it has to be investment in in the infrastructure of the company. And of course it needs a plan for growth. And our view at the moment is that the people who are running the company currently are not in that place. So look, we're having talks with both the prospective new buyers. We're having talks with the government. And what we want to do today is give you an idea of where we are with those. I'm going to say to you that the talks with the prospective new buyers, whilst we have a responsibility to get in there and see if we can get the best agreement that we really can, we also know that they need to prove to you, to us and to the country that they are not asset strippers. And we are not at a point yet where we could honestly say that is the case. We've had some constructive discussions with them. We've had some moments where it's clear to us that the current Royal Mail board are trying to influence them in the wrong way. And unless they want to get over that, unless they're up for a serious, fresh start, then we won't be able to reach an agreement. And we're not in the market for reaching an agreement either on USO trials unless we can sort out some of the problems that you're facing. And we are saying that loud and clear to anybody who wants to listen to it, including the government. The government's position at the moment is that they're involved in two ways. One, obviously, the National Security Investigation Act is being carried out and has been for a couple of months now. Now, that has a time limit. I think we can probably see that it's been extended, but it will have to end fairly soon because they work within a certain time limit. We can't influence that. That's a matter for government. It's a matter for the national security issues. And what they're looking at is obviously, the importance of the USO infrastructure for Royal Mail and whether essentially the new buyers are fit and proper people to be able to have some control over that. The other area the government are looking at is around getting better and stronger protections than what were in the original offer document negotiated by the current Royal Mail Group and the prospective buyers. And there's a few areas in there that we're obviously pressing the government to step up to the plate on. One of them is to be sure about the financing of this deal and to make sure that at what point do they start taking money out and that doesn't impinge on you, or on our members' pay, terms and conditions, and on the future prospects of the company. So that's a really important debate. We're also talking to experts in that field to make sure that we've got the right commitments. The other area is around the USO and around what might happen in a future sale. And our view is that the government, in stepping up, should be saying that we want some kind of ongoing, if you like, stake in a change in ownership. Now, I'm not saying that's renationalisation, that's not on the agenda, but they do need to ensure that they can satisfy the public of this country that they are doing the right thing. So there's a lot at stake here. What we're saying to the company is we want a fresh start. We want an agreement that gives us protections, legally binding protections that stops them becoming asset strippers. We want an agreement, importantly, that completely changes the way that Royal Mail is run at the moment, from top down to local level. We want a new governance structure. We want a governance structure where workers and customers have a greater say over how the business is run and the future direction of it. We also want to give you a meaningful and serious stake in the future of the company that you work for. And we call that an ownership stake. We believe that a collective trust is the right way forward, not free shares, because frankly, they're not going to help align the interest of people. We want an agreement that rebuilds Royal Mail. And we know the things that are wrong, you know the things that are wrong, and we've got an opportunity here to put them right. So we've got a meeting next week with the prospective buyers, and I think when that meeting is concluded, we'll have a better idea on how far we're away from reaching an agreement. There's a long way to go. We're not going to be panicked by anything the government does or anyone else. We've got to get the right agreement. And we want to talk to you about that increasingly in the coming weeks and increasingly with our representatives.
I'll go to Martin in one moment. First of all, just can I get clarity when you say we need an agreement? Who's this agreement between? Is this agreement between the union and the potential buyers? Is that what you're talking about here?
So we need an agreement that basically does all the things I've just been talking about. And one of the things that me and Martin are very clear on, and the Postal Executive and the national officers of the union, is that we're not going to be salamied by Royal Mail currently saying, well, we're in charge and we want to talk to you about these issues, and then EP Group sitting at the back of that, waiting to see how we get on with that. We've got to bring those two things together, and we've got to get an agreement on everything, including trials on the USO, including what's happening in the workplace and whether they want a fresh start. And what we're a little bit concerned about, which we've seen develop for some time now, is that the current management, in our view, are setting out to the prospective buyers that it's not in their interests to reach an agreement with the union on the type of issues that we've been talking about. We're not going to accept that. I think our members know our views on the current board, the previous people that left, but unfortunately there's still many of them who only see the business from a financial point of view. They don't see the need to get workers on board and to fundamentally change the relationship which they've helped destroy, those managers, in the last few years. We want to rebuild that. We want to align the interests of all groups, and we want the government to step up. So of course at the same time we're talking to the government, and really all parties are talking to each other, but we've got to bring that to a head where we make sure that everybody understands what the CWU is looking for. Our members can be part of that, get behind that, and we can deliver a deal that delivers a fresh start for everyone.
Martin, do you want to come in with sort of your opening thoughts?
Yeah, good evening, everyone. Look, we've got two of the biggest challenges this union's ever faced. Normally you get one of these in a generation. We're facing two in the next 12 months. And we're going to use both of those challenges to get the right agreement, to reset industrial relations, reset your workload in the workplace, and resolve a list of outstanding issues. And if you look at the talks we're having with EP Group, that is what we're putting forward to them. And what we're also saying to the current Royal Mail negotiating team when we're discussing the USO reform, we're not going to agree the USO changes, the USO pilots, until we resolve the same things we're discussing with EP. Now, what is clear is there is going to be USO reform next year. That's not just us saying that. Ofcom produced a report on the 5th of September saying there's an urgent need to resolve the USO, and that the USO was costing Royal Mail between 325 million to 625 million per year, and that Royal Mail have not made a profit from the USO since 2015 to 2016. So those are what Ofcom has produced. They're going to come out in January with a consultation exercise, and in the summer of next year it's likely they will agree USO reform. And what we're saying to basically Royal Mail is we recognise there has to be USO reform. And the important bit here is back in 2002, Royal Mail were delivering 20 billion letters per year. They're now at 7 billion, but there's two important things here. One is back in 2002, Royal Mail didn't have downstream access, so they got the money from the outward all the way to the final mile. Now, downstream access, where they only get the money from the inward part of the mail centre, the most costly part, the final mile, that now accounts for 70% of all letters. And clearly, that makes it very hard for Royal Mail to ever make a profit under the USO, and that's why they haven't made a profit for so many years. So what we're using this for is to resolve some of our outstanding issues. The change is worth around 300 million to Royal Mail if all the things they assume work, and we're not so sure they will work, and we're not so sure it will reach that 300 million. But what are we trying to resolve? Well, the first thing we're trying to resolve is we want an agreement which harmonises new entrant terms and conditions. Remember, they were imposed. We've never agreed new entrants coming into the business. Royal Mail imposed them, and they posed anyone coming into the business from 1st of December 2022 would come on inferior terms and conditions. And even with the national minimum wage improving, we're seeing attrition rates and new entrants ranging from 16 to 17%, causing a resourcing crisis, resourcing mechs, and we're also seeing basically real issues in delivery offices. That is a priority for us. We recognise there's got to be a time span on this, because obviously working through this, but there's got to be a commitment to harmonise new entrants' terms and conditions. And there's got to be incremental scales of how we do that. The second thing we're saying is part-time to full-time. So the USO model increases basically part-time to full-time jobs. So there will be more full-time jobs under this model. And at the moment, Royal Mail are saying to part-timers, you can increase your contract, but you've got to go into a new entrant's terms and conditions. We're saying there is no way we will support a pilot unless people can stay on the same terms and conditions they've currently got. We're also saying there is no point in us agreeing a new USO unless every single walk can clear. So it's fair and manageable workload. It's total reset of what's happening. We know in too many offices, people dread going on a rest day because they come into 2 days' work. They can't clear it. It's demoralising. It's leading to attrition rates. So we're saying there must be a total reset. And then we're saying we want improved times of attendance. We want to improve attendance patterns. In 2003, 94% of delivery workers were on a 6-day week. Even though they could have moved voluntary since 1987 to a 5-day week. And we want to make sure people move to better times of attendance, better attendance patterns. We're saying, why don't we look at a minimum of 1 Saturday off in 2, and this model does do that, and why don't we look at more time away from work, whether that's a 9-day fortnight, a 4-day week, a Wellington Plus, where we have more time away from work. And that's another agenda item. We're saying there has to be no compulsory redundancies. That's got to be extended. And there's got to be an improvement on VR terms. We've already agreed with the company on MDEC closure that there would be an increase of the up to 9 months, which was imposed by Royal Mail during the dispute, to 12 months, so an extra 12 weeks pile-on. So we're in those discussions to do that. And then we're looking, how do we resolve fatigue issue in deliveries? And there is a real opportunity here, because the model says you don't have to deliver everything every single day. You could do a walk in 1 week and a drive in another week, if you can drive. So there's a range of things we're looking. On top of that, we want to say we can never agree with the new owners an agreement or the USO change when there's still imposed things on this union. An imposition of new entrants' terms and conditions, imposition of the attendance procedure, imposition of the VR terms, are all things which have to go before we will support either the ownership model or the USO change. So we have got a massive opportunity here to totally reset where we were 12 months ago. And we're determined to use all our leverage. You supporting us, we will get the right deal, which totally changes the balance of forces which we're currently dealing with.
There's so much interesting stuff there in terms of your position. I just want to make sure I'm clear about what deal it is we're talking about. So there's a takeover bid by Kretinsky and his company. Now, for him to buy Royal Mail legally, sort of in law, he doesn't need a deal with you guys, does he?
No, he doesn't.
That's not a precondition of buying that. No. But also something that's happening next year is that Kretinsky is only really wanting to buy this company if he knows that USO reform is down the line, because otherwise it's a massive loss maker.
Yeah.
You're not going to buy a loss maker. And so you think your leverage is, you say to Kretinsky, let's go to those USO negotiations to some degree on the same page, and we can sort of reach a deal which is a deal with Ofcom to make a new USO deal, which is mutually beneficial for both you and us.
Yeah.
And that's sort of the state of play.
Look, I think that why would Kretinsky want to buy Royal Mail? Well, I don't think we're sitting here pretending he's going to be some kind of charity. This guy is a billionaire. He's a very powerful business person who's built up a portfolio mostly around energy. I mean, our view is that he's coming to the UK, I think, to invest in probably a number of different things in future years. So there is a question as to the other part of the leverage is why would he want to buy a company where if we can't come together and find solutions that align the interest of our members, the workforce, the customers and the company, we can't succeed. There are certain conditions here that have to be met, whoever owns the company. And I think he gets that. I think he realises that if he's going to invest in this, he's got to bring those three groups together: the company, the workforce and customers. And what we hear is that he wants to do that. What we haven't seen is the evidence in paper, in a legally binding agreement, and also through talks with the government, that that's what's going to happen. So we are not sold on this by any stretch. What we're saying is, at the moment, if we get the right agreement, we're willing to move forward. And, I think we've also got to recognise that he is buying. There's been a lot of talk recently about the cost of national insurance. The company, I think, starting to use that again. I mean, the other thing that we didn't touch on there, but is number one on our agenda, is pay for our members. That's coming round. Our members know that. Our members deserve an significant above inflation pay rise. But all of these things have a price tag. We can't kid anybody that they don't come with a price tag. But I think he's looking at this from a point of view of, although those things may add to cost, this is a significant investor. And, I don't see how he would be put off with the sort of money that he's investing in the future. He should be able to invest in this and invest in the people and invest in the infrastructure to grow the business. If he can't do those two things, we would be in the place where we would have to say, well, he must be an asset stripper. So look, there's a lot of issues that are connected here. And what we are saying tonight is very clearly, Martin just said it, I said it in my opening address, is we're not doing an agreement with one bit of the company on one thing and an agreement with EP Group on something else. It's all or nothing.
And so when you talk about negotiating pay, because obviously that's just something you do on the regular, sort of as a union with the employer, with the bosses, are you sort of thinking you'll be negotiating pay with Kretinsky before he buys the company, to say, when you run the company, we want this pay deal?
It becomes blurred.
Yeah.
Because obviously he may well own the company before the 1st of April. So therefore our negotiations would naturally be with him. He may not do by then. And our negotiations obviously are with the current Royal Mail team. Now, our view is the current board are anti-union, anti-worker, have given up, got no money, as the half-yearly results showed. They might have improved the loss, but it's still a loss of 67 million. And their ambition to grow the company is non-existent. We're meeting some of the new people who have come in more recently, and we're having better conversations, but I think they're in a little bit of a Mexican standoff, because they're looking at, obviously, the new owners, when have they taken up, and obviously where the board is, who have given up. But we're determined, as I said, the two once in a generational issues, we got the best opportunity to totally reset our members' lives, working terms and conditions, on pay and everything else, by using both of them to our advantage, trying to reach an agreement, the right agreement, which really changes our members' terms and conditions. And the one thing which the USO does, there's no impact in terms of jobs upstream. So processing, area distribution network, parcel force, there is no job reductions. What we're dealing with is the impact in delivery offices. How do we safeguard jobs? How do we safeguard terms and conditions? And how do we move all our outstanding agenda? Because Dave said it, the National Insurance, Royal Mail, have put in their half-yearly results, will cost them about £120 million. They're saying that's about 2% on basic pay. And that comes out in April. Whilst we're now looking at above inflation pay rise, we're looking at new entrants, which is obviously a cost, higher VR terms, and obviously other improvements, including sick pay.
And on the USO, you know, you're saying upstream jobs protected, downstream jobs in delivery. That's sort of where the issue is. You're saying you want a USO agreement where you protect those. If I'm Kretinsky and I'm thinking the whole point of USO reform is to save money, how do you save money? You shrink your workforce. So how do you sort of square that circle?
So there will be job losses. Any USO model creates job losses, and there will be job losses. The key to this is how many, and the opportunity to limit it, where we're saying obviously it's got to work, quality's got to be better than it is now, and therefore you have no compulsory redundancies, and you, to support no compulsory redundancies, you also have improvements on VR terms. Now, as we said, our package, what we want, is quite an ambitious package, and we're determined to get that package, and we're determined to obviously leverage everything to ensure we get it.
Let's go to some questions. Loads of questions, sort of people talking about especially sort of their current conditions, the things they're very concerned about at the moment. So Richie Gidboy, I'd like to know when the newer members will be paid the same hourly rate as older members, and also the door-to-doors money. And that's just for starters because it causes resentment. Doors-to-doors money, I'm not quite sure what that means there. Do you want to clarify?
Yeah, look, as we said, we're determined to get new entrants the same rate. And it's important to remember these were imposed. The unions never agreed new entrants. The difference between the hourly rate of the national current legacy contracts and the new entrants is around basically where we could improve it. So we could go from 40 hours in new entrants full-time to 37, and the difference between the hourly rate is 6 pence per hour. And those are the kind of things we're looking at to harmonise. And then if we reduce the higher overtime rates of new entrants, we would get same hourly rate. But then we're also then looking at the delivery supplement, which is worth around 40 million to be put on the table to try and harmonise it. And this is where it becomes much more difficult from day one. So this is where we're talking around the harmonisation plan, which may be 1 or 2 years trying to achieve the same terms and conditions. We also got obviously new entrants who do not get the old RIS payments. They're the difficult recruitment areas, and they range from £5 a week to £35. So we've got to find a plan how they get them. And then of course, inner and outer London waiting is different to what new entrants to get now. So there's a number of moving parts in this where we're determined to get the actual harmonisation. But it's important to remember, when you join as a new entrant, you don't go onto the full rate now, and you never used to for 12 to 24 months. So if we can get to a plan where we have the hourly rate the same, but we start moving over a period of time to when they harmonise. One, it might retain more new entrants, but it would be fairer, and we could then say we haven't got new entrants anymore, we just got one grade. And that's what we're trying to get to. But all of these things cost, and it's priorities. If we want an above inflation pay rise, we want to reduce sick leave, we want new entrants, we want improved VR terms, and a range of other things. You can't do all of that in one go. It's the priorities of how you do that and how quickly you do that.
Can I just get, what's a VR term?
Voluntary redundancy.
Voluntary redundancy, sorry. A couple of questions about takeover. So you and Chapman, do you think further acquisitions from EP Group in the logistics sector within Europe could lead to job cuts down the line? It's possible he could strip Royal Mail of assets and merge with other entities. And James Caruana says, so you view this takeover as a good opportunity to change the status quo. Does the buyer seem receptive to these changes? I mean, you've kind of already suggested he does seem receptive to these changes. So I almost want to add an extra question to it, which is, are you sure you're not being taken for a ride?
So look, we've got to look at this from a number of points of view. The first point we have to look at is the status quo. The status quo is going nowhere. Our members understand that. The current people who run Royal Mail are running the company into the ground. They made terrible decisions a couple of years back about when they had money, where they gave that money. They gave that money to the shareholders when they knew there was a cost of living crisis coming on and they knew that there was change coming down. They wasted nearly £1 billion in a couple of years where they could have had more money. Those same people have no vision for the future of this company. If they had a vision, our members would have seen that by now, and they would have seen improvements in the way that they're being treated in the workforce. So our view is that the status quo, staying with the current company, the people who are running this, who have pretty much given up from what we can see, other than still trying to create in some areas hostility, there's no point in believing that that's going to keep any jobs. We ain't being taken for a ride. We're trying to deal with the realities of both a very challenging external environment, and I said that earlier on. It wouldn't matter whether Royal Mail was renationalised, whether Kretinsky owns it, whether the current board continue, unless there are three things, the company does not succeed. Those three things are: treat your workforce better, pay them better, harmonise the terms and conditions, get your resourcing model right, all under the banner of treat the workforce better. Secondly, someone has to invest money in this company, in both its people and its infrastructure. And the third one is we have got to grow a different sort of product, different services. We believe we can do that. There's got to be an ambition to bring Royal Mail through the reality of letter decline into a new area, and that has to go beyond parcels. We can do much more using the infrastructure. We can add social value to the UK. We can bring commercial and economic value to the UK, but it needs a different growth strategy, and the workforce needs to be right at the heart of that. So our view is, whoever you're talking to here, then that's got to be the agenda. So then that takes you to the point. So, you know, look, this is a private company. If somebody comes in and puts a bid on the table that's enough, we can't just sit up and say, well, we don't agree with that. What we have a responsibility to do is talk to these people. What we're making very clear this evening, though, is that in talking to those people, unless they're up for a fresh start, unless they do all the things differently to what the current board are doing, then we can't support that. Now, what we would also be saying at the same time is the government needs to step up. The government understand, I think, that the future of Royal Mail is at stake. So they're looking for an agreement. We'd be wanting any agreement that we got, if we reach an agreement, to be guaranteed by the government. So they would be sitting behind that agreement. And that's where you have to face the reality of this. So my point would be this: we know what we want. I think the members know what's needed for the company to be successful. And if you have those conditions, they work with whoever wants to come along and work with us. Whether that's a new buyer from abroad, whether that's government taking a better interest in this, whether it's, I don't think there's any chance of the current board ever changing their mind. I mean, these people are so set in their ways, and they don't think about the future. They think about, basically the current financial position, and they think about protecting their own reputation, which has been damaged beyond that. So, if we're not going to have a serious discussion on this with our members, with everybody else taking into account everything, then we ain't coming out the other end with the best deal. And we believe that our job is to test this new prospective buyer in as many ways as we can to see whether they are for real or whether they're not. What we can't do, beyond what the government have already done in terms of suspending the sale to go through the national security investigation, is say that there isn't going to be an outcome where shareholders vote for this new buyer. But we're very confident that if we get people behind what we're talking about, and they need to input into that, and we're more than happy to go out and listen to some of the views on that, the USO, the new buyer. The agenda we're putting forward is the right agenda for our members, for UK postal services, and we've now got to see whether they want to step up and meet us and reach an agreement. So, I think that's the honest answer, is that you've got to deal with what's in front of you.
No, I totally take that point. I think we should move on as well from the takeover in one moment. I just want to put one more comment to you. Cy London says you don't become a billionaire by working with unions. So I know you're saying, we work with the situation we've got, but should members feel worried at least,
Well, of course they should. But I think our members are worried about what's happening now as well.
And it's important also, he works with German unions, work councils. There's a range of unionised firms which he has asked us to speak to. So, of course, we've got to get the right agreement, but let's be clear, this board, the people on that board, didn't want a union, didn't want a collective voice in the workplace. So it's whether we can get the right agreement using the USO, using all our leverage to reset everything.
Let's go to some different questions. Simon Smith, what is the business going to do with Parcel Force? Is the one network going ahead? Are Parcel Force safe within the company?
Yeah, look, I think Royal Mail are looking at one network, and that's another massive issue. So at the moment, the technology can't read the same things in Royal Mail and Parcel Force. That should be up and running sometime in March, where Royal Mail and Parcel Force will come together. What Parcel Force obviously is a company which is losing around £48 million a year in a £500 million run company. And the future is definitely within one parcel strategy. The important bit here is if we go into one parcel strategy, then the 25% owner drivers must go because we've got enough people within Royal Mail and Parcel Force to do that growth in parcels, not self-employed drivers.
Neil Wilkinson, our office is still prioritising parcels over mail. Ours is every day.
And I think this is one of the flaws. We met Ofcom the other day, where clearly quality is still around 78% against a 93.5 first class. And what Royal Mail will say is they can't afford to bring it up, and Ofcom will say we can't really find a company which isn't making money. They're almost a £9 billion turnover company which is made a loss of 67 million. And this is where you get to the point Dave said. You need someone who's going to invest in growth, invest in the workforce, and invest in the infrastructure to support the actual industry. And sadly, it's not the government, and it's not going to be the current board. and therefore can we get the right agreement which totally resets in a delivery office where they can't prioritise parcels, where they have to deliver letters, first class, non-priority items and parcels to the standard which Ofcom will set. And if they don't, they get heavily fined. And the other thing, you won't grow this industry with poor quality. Royal Mail will never be the cheapest parcel provider, but it should be the best quality. And at the moment, it's not.
A couple of questions on sick pay. Hardcore Alien says, sort the sick pay. I can't afford to lose 2 days pay. And Jana says, sickness policy is a disgrace. On deliveries, we should get the old policy. We have loads more chance of injuries resulting in sickness compared with someone indoors sorting mail. So someone saying that having a sickness policy that isn't adequate is even worse if you've got a chance of getting injured on the job.
I think what's important here, Royal Mail was going to change everyone's terms and contracts to introduce the sick pay, where it would be an SSP for a week after the first accident. And of course, Royal Mail was saying they were spending £250 million on sick leave. So we're going to change people's contracts. We entered into an agreement which, was uncomfortable. We didn't want to do this, which reduced that to 2 days. And we also had a criteria which says if sickness went below 5.5, SSP would come off the table. And the reality is, in 7 of the 12 ROD areas, it's below 5.5. And we're working to move that down. But the reality is, Royal Mail were going to change everyone's terms and conditions and bring in statutory sick pay after the first absence for 7 days. And you're left with that. Are we better with an agreement where we're reducing basically the 5.5 where it come off the table? But again, what we've said to the new owners, we expect that to come off the table. Because as long as we're working with them to reduce sick leave, mental health and all of that, then we should have proper sick leave. Because people out on delivery, walking 4 or 5 hours in all weathers, will obviously be more prone to have sick leave. And the age profile is 50 odd years age, so you're going to have wear and tear. But this company wanted to rip up your contracts and introduce it as 7 days.
We've got 2 questions on pay, which I know you've discussed before, but this might sort of give us a slightly different angle. Buchan Peter, any more information on the £1.4 billion pension excess? And then are we aiming for a 10% pay rise? I'm not quite sure if those 2 issues are connected. You guys will have to tell me. And then Alex Walk says, I've missed the first bit, but what is the union's response to the article about employer national insurance contribution meaning job cuts in the business? Apologies if it has been answered already. So we've got the pension excess. Are you going for a 10% pay rise? And will national insurance contributions increasing mean job cuts in the business?
So on the question of the pension surplus, this is from a closed pension scheme, which we believe could be as much as, and it's probably going to grow, around £1.4 billion. It's a hell of a lot of money. So our first concern is that one of the things that Mr. Kretinsky wants to get hold of. And we need to reach an agreement on what would happen with that surplus at the point that the trustees of that pension scheme, who are independent of Royal Mail, decide that that surplus can be used. And all the indications are that that will come at some point in the reasonably near future. And what we're going to be saying is we want some of that money at the point when it's no longer a threat to anybody else's pensions, which is determined by the trustees. So if there's £1.4 billion, what we've got to ensure is that that don't end up in the pockets of Kretinsky, if he buys the company, the current board, and that a reasonable share of that goes into either our members' pockets to support them going forward and maybe improve other pension changes, like, for example, the retirement age, currently under the new scheme 67. Maybe we can use it to pull some of that back, but also in investing in the future of the company. So these are things that are high on the agenda. And in relation to pay, the position with the national insurance, what you're going to hear from not just Royal Mail, from every company, and the media obviously wanting this to be the debate, that the government's recent increase in national insurance is going to sort of skin some of these companies. Now, we're coming from a very challenging financial position. Martin explained that they're sort of assessing that it could be as much as £120 million extra a year. But again, you know, if you look at the scale of the investment that Kretinsky's people are putting into this business, we're sitting there saying there's no way that he should be worried about that scale of national insurance money against the investment. So, you know, from our point of view, we're not buying the argument that suddenly says that there can't be any pay rise. This is about whether you want to invest in people or not, and that is the most important thing. If we're in a position where we can get the right pay deal for our people, what we want to say to our members is that we will also be looking at where that pension surplus goes in the future. That's our members' money, in our view. The company will want to use it. All companies do that. Our job is to make sure that our members get a serious share of that surplus at the point it becomes available.
And in a way, because I mean, I normally hear about pension deficits. I normally hear sort of workers having to accept changes to their pension deals because the business says it's massively in deficit.
Yeah.
The only thing you can do is accept a worse. This sounds in a way like quite a positive opportunity that the pension is surplus.
It's a strange set of circumstances. So some years back, Royal Mail did have the biggest pension deficit in Western Europe. There was no other pension scheme that had that scale of deficit. It was almost bringing the company to its knees. So there had to be some change. What then happened is that scheme effectively got taken over by the government at the point of privatisation. So they took on both the assets of the scheme and they effectively wiped out the deficit. The bit that was always surprising, I think, was that after that, it suddenly built up a major surplus with the sort of changes in between. In the last few years, there's suddenly a surplus. So that makes you wonder how we got from not the other stuff was real. I mean, no one could ever say anything other than that. But from there on, there's this surplus built up. So yeah, we're a bit surprised that given what happened initially, where all the deficit was taken away, that the surplus to the scheme that was closed, the care scheme as we called it, but that money is there, it's real, and you know our position is workers deserve that money, so that's what we'll be fighting for alongside pay.
A very specific question here from SS. As a new starter, what right do I have to refuse to deliver door to door that I am not getting paid for up to 5 weeks?
People don't no longer get paid for door to door. The important bit is we put into a delivery supplement back in 2010, and it's true that new entrants don't receive basically the delivery supplement, which is part of our aspirations to get it. But door to door is no longer a separate payment. It is part of workload and therefore has to be delivered. But our ambition and our strategy is to make sure everyone gets a delivery supplement. At the moment, new entrants don't get that, and that's part of our strategy to make sure when we're speaking to Daniel Kaczynski, when we're speaking to Royal Mail, the harmonisation of new entrants' terms and conditions is to achieve that.
Bomber Harris says, how many job losses in delivery will there be with the new USO model? Because you mentioned before there will inevitably be some. Do you have a sort of ballpark?
Look, at the moment, there's lots of modelling, lots of assumptions around potential job losses, and they range, including whether they're full-time equivalents in that. If you remember last year, Royal Mail came out and said there would be around 1,000 redundancies in terms, and others would be dealt with through natural wastage. Now, we haven't yet agreed any job losses, and obviously the pilots will look at the assumptions. But I think Royal Mail's original announcement was 7,000 job losses, but only 1,000 redundancies, so all the others would go through natural wastage. We're still not sure whether that's the right number, and at the moment we haven't agreed any number. But clearly the USO is designed to make money, the change, and there will be a reduction in overall routes.
And natural wastage is people retiring in them, not replacing them, right?
It's not recruiting against them.
Yeah.
So in delivery offices now, the attrition rate means on any given day, there's some people who are not available to deliver those walks.
Yeah.
And of course, if you're reducing the amount of walks under the USO, you just don't recruit people against that.
Job security, though, we call it job security, is we're looking for an agreement that extends the commitment to no compulsory redundancy, so nobody would be forced out of Royal Mail. We also, though, have to address the issue of agency staff. And there's too many agency staff. So when Royal Mail talk about that, I think we're all talking about, well, you can't have agency people working, when you're then saying to other people that they got to leave the business. The issue is, for us, we're not accepting any compulsory redundancies. Two, what determines ultimately how many jobs there are is whether workload is achievable. And the problem, I think, with the way that Royal Mail are looking at the USO reform, we know that it's not sustainable in its current format. It's not sustainable anywhere in the world, and particularly in Europe. Everyone's changed it. We've got to acknowledge the reality of letter decline. We're not in the real world if we don't start recognising that the job's changing. So, I think the real question is can you get quality of service right? Can you get the workload right for our members? That is what determines the amount of jobs. Can we start to motivate people to get back on board with Royal Mail? Well, all of that depends on the overall approach that anyone wants to take going forward in the future. What we're setting out is a very comprehensive agenda to address all of these issues.
Can I check with you both? We were going to go for an hour, but we got over 1,100 people watching and a bunch more questions to get through. So can we go for an extra 15 minutes?
Of course
So we'll be here for another 15 minutes. So do keep sending in your questions. We'll try and get through as many as we can. Some really interesting ones coming in here. Mind Rocker Joel. I've been sub-rep for the last 3 months. I haven't received one bit of training so far. This isn't due to my superiors. It's due to the management not allowing me the time. What would you say to Mind Rocker Joel?
Okay, so we've just agreed with Royal Mail a new training package, and along with Kate Hudson, the education secretary, so we've actually agreed that from January it will be launched where people can request trainer event, and also then they can be released. So Royal Mail's agreed that paid release. Now, if there's any issues on that, people need to contact me, but we've agreed that with Royal Mail. Obviously, there's always issues leading up to peak, the heaviest period of the year, more for what Dave said, agency increases, etc. But Trainer will be launched in January, and we want to upskill all our reps. We've gone through a period through the pandemic and through the strike where we've got reps who simply haven't been trained, and we're rolling that out from January, and we want to upskill all our reps.
So your concrete advice is sort of wait till January, and you've got an agreement with management. If management says no, contact you, and you can sort of make that happen. John Snow, can we please address the fact that we are getting bullied into logging on to the My Performance app every day. Genuine question from the union, so we know where we stand. Is it mandatory?
My understanding it's voluntary, and the union hasn't agreed My Performance. We're in discussions around how that's applied, but in our view it should be voluntary, and we shouldn't be micromanaging people. Technology should be used to support people. In far too many industries it's used to bully people, and we're taking that up at the moment through Tony Bush.
We're also, though, talking about things like how do workers feel that they're trusted again to manage their own daily workload, and that the company believes in them rather than, as Martin said, and as the question was posed, that they're being bullied or they're being, every minute of the day watched as to what they're doing. Now, clearly, this technology exists. This is not just a problem in our industry, it's a problem in all industries. And one of the things we're saying about the future is employees should own that technology in a way that they can be trusted and that they're not, chased around every minute of the day. People should take a longer term view of that. That app, Royal Mail will always say, this is good for people. At the moment, I think the view that's coming through is it isn't good for people. But we can't just dismiss technology. It can be useful, but the balance of the say that the worker has over it versus the manager is the key debate. And at the moment, we should be looking at a new way of dealing with it, where they can use it to sort of plan their route. They can use it to look at all of the various things that are happening on a particular day. What it shouldn't be looked at is as though you're not working as hard as you should be. That should be a longer term view. This is this mad stuff that managers and employers tend to go down the road of, like, as though you can keep making people improve. What technology is doing in the UK, not just in Royal Mail, is burning workers out. We've got to shift the balance of forces in who uses that technology, what it's used for, and that's on our agenda.
A couple more questions. Willie, I'm sorry, but our office has zero faith in Royal Mail and CWU not getting out till 11 and subs 12:30 doing half deliveries. It's a shocking service and the pride of job is long gone.
Can I address this issue that, we go out and we talk to people, and obviously the past dispute is still in people's minds. And I think there'll be an opportunity to properly talk about that and the reasons why we made the agreement we made. Our view, we made an agreement because we wanted to save the company, give it a chance to survive. That wasn't the reason that the people who are running Royal Mail made the agreement. We're fairly certain of that, which is back to that point about we don't want the status quo. The questioner is clearly right about the issue of if the service is that poor. What we've got to do is get Royal Mail to understand that there's no movement on anything here until they sort those problems out in that office. Because it's madness. If you don't deliver quality of service to what customers are already paying for, you will never grow the service. Now that's up to Royal Mail to start finally addressing the concerns of people with us, pushing them, and we are. And what I'd say about the dispute is, people sort of think that somehow you go into a dispute and you come out the other end with all of the circumstances that we're facing, many of them external challenges that we've never had to face previously. And you just get everything you want. It never happens like that. It never has. And we've got to recognise that the balance that we're putting into this is we've got a very strong agenda for the future. Now, if people want to get behind that, we will deliver on that agenda. Again, there will have to be things in there that the management believe can grow the business, that we believe can grow the business. It can't stay as it is. I think, I welcome the opportunity at some point to have an honest discussion about what happened in that dispute, particularly what happened between when we reached the last agreement and how we ended up in the dispute as well. Because I think, sometimes I hear some of the nonsense that people talk about. I also hear people who might be disillusioned, who might be leaving the job, who might have left the job, including people in the union. And I think some of it is about other things, and maybe there'd be a moment where we can have a proper discussion about what really happened, the reasons for it. But let me be absolutely clear, we did the right thing to save our members' jobs and to save the company. And the circumstances that we were in, we didn't want to be in, but we had to deal with it and we didn't run away from it.
And I think, Michael, just to add to that, if we had the list of the office, more than happy to have a chat around going there, speaking to reps, because I think, look, there is a reality. Unions are powerful, but you don't cease a company's ambition to come off planes. And they were always going to serve notice on using planes to carry mail around. That would always mean that work will get into delivery offices, mail centres later. What we had to do is mitigate that. Vast majority of people, it's mitigated to less than 60 minutes. Some it's 90, but even this week in Scotland, London and other places, we've reduced it again. And we're going to continue to try and reduce it. But people have got the chance of getting on board for a total reset. USO is going to change. You either stand on the sidelines and watch it change, or you join and support the union in us getting the right changes, resolving some of the issues, including quality of service and a fair and manageable workload.
So there's a question with a laughing emoji, which means I think I don't quite understand the joke, but it's from Ruhel Ahmed, and I imagine you will, and probably most people watching will. When we getting our 50 stamps? Can you explain that to me like I'm an idiot?
One of the pleasures of being a postal worker is every Christmas they get some free stamps.
You used to get some garden seeds.
Probably worth more now, the prices that Royal Mail are charging.
Yeah, that's...
I don't know when they get them. They get them. I'd rather concentrate on how much pay they get and what their terms and conditions are, but I get the joke as well.
All right, let's go through these two more, and then I've got a question I want to end on, which is your message to reps and members. But before we get to that, let's go through. Stuart Meredith says, we need more innovative duty patterns, not just the standard 9-day fortnight, 4-day week. We need to cover the PM delivery window with attractive attendance patterns. Do you agree? And Detailer 77 says, we should be getting certain bespoke products and items delivered by 7 a.m. Responses to those sort of comments?
I would support Stuart's point. There's two aspects here. Delivering letters and parcels is still the best economical and profitable part of the operation. So the core will still do that. There's a real opportunity to deliver parcels earlier in the day and also later in the day. Royal Mail's share of next day parcels, the 24-hour first class market, is less than a third of the market. And Royal Mail's share from privatisation on parcels has dropped from 74% to 36%. Unless we're delivering up to 7, 8 o'clock on those parcels, we will never grow the company. And we know some people don't like the idea of delivering later. But if we don't want to just manage the decline on letters and parcels on the core, the real ambition is how do we grow parcels later? And can we have innovative duty structures? Can we have improved duty structures which deliver up to 7, 8 o'clock? And there's ambitions out there. At the moment, LAT and DPR, the average finishing time, because everything's recorded on PDAs, is 5:19. You will not grow the next day market finishing at 5:19. You've got to move to 7 o'clock. And 80% of orders of next day parcels will be done between 7 and midnight. Won't connect with the core. There's a real ambition to grow. And if you grow in that product, we're talking about significant growth revenue for pay rises and everything else going forward. and for job security. So you might lose jobs through the USO, but you gain jobs through growth. And we've got to get into that market. And whether that's innovative duty structures, whether that's 7-day fortnights, whether all of those kind of things, we should be talking, and we are talking with the company around how we grow that product.
All right, let's end with a comment and a question. So Tony says, so many offices don't have reps anymore. We need to rebuild the union. And Sarah says, what is your message to reps and members from this session? Where do we go from here?
Yeah.
I suppose it's that final question really important, because what I've got from both of you today is that the stakes are quite high. There's lots of concerns, but also lots of opportunities. Sort of someone listening to this who's a member of the CWU, a rep, a member, what should they be doing? What should they be taking away from this session?
Yeah, look, we know there's over 200 local delivery offices without reps. Let's be honest, it was a tough dispute. We saw a lot of reps and members sacked, which this union, unlike any other union, got back. Biggest reversal of dismissals any union's done under the Faulkner and the collective agreement. But we know local reps, it's the hardest job. We've been meeting every local rep, 7 divisions we've now met. There's only 3 divisions where we haven't met the local reps. There's South Central, South Wales, South West, and also North East. And they're all going to be reconnect with those local reps, because they're going to be our eyes in the field. The changes of the USO, the leverage, they see it every day. And we want to really make sure they're trained and they're on board for our strategy.
Obviously, our members' jobs. And, my final message is the union will deliver that if you support the CWU.
Martin, Dave, it's been a really, really fascinating conversation, and especially a thank you to all of you. It's great to have over 1,000 people watching the live show throughout. I'm sure there'll be many, many more people watching it afterwards. Really inspiring actually to see such a dynamic membership asking so many interesting questions. Appreciate you guys coming here to answer them, especially the challenging ones. It's always incredibly interesting. So for now, we will wrap up. Thank you for watching. Thank you for your comments and your questions. We'll be back next week. For now, you've been watching CWU Live. Stick with your union.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Good night.